This is Rob Morse of the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. I'm reminding you that this podcast is one of the many good ones on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the high-functioning marksman, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. For the reloaders in the audience, I've got a question for you. Have you ever ordered reloading supplies online? If so, who do you call when you need help or you need something special? When you call, do you talk to a customer service rep or can you talk to the owner? Well, if you'd prefer a personal touch and great customer service, talk to my friend Jim Swindle at US Reloading Supply. Jim is a retired law enforcement officer who's been reloading since 1972, and he founded US Reloading Supply back in 2014 as a family operated business focusing on helping shooters get the components that they need at the best prices. If you've got a special order, large quantities, or something you can't find at another website, call them for a quote and they will help you find what you need at a great price. Get all the top brands, get 100% satisfaction guarantee, never pay sales tax, and get free shipping on all non-hazmat items. Check them out online at usreloadingsupply.com. That's usreloadingsupply.com. or call them today, 941-451-7357, and tell them you heard about it on Unload and Show Clear. Our special guest for today's show is Brad Weilbrenner from Loudon, New Hampshire, representing the great state of New Hampshire, our first New Hampshireite. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate being here.
Is it New Hampshireite? Was that right? That sounded horrible.
Well, you can call me anything but late for dinner. It doesn't matter.
Well, thank you for being here. Tell us a little about yourself and what you do for a living there in Loudon.
Let's see. I work for the New Hampshire Department of Corrections as the Training Development Manager. That whole big title means that I just pretty much oversee the Training Bureau on the day-to-day operations.
Okay.
Other than that, 2 nights a week I play paramedic at a small municipal fire department.
All right. That keeps you busy. So training for the Department of Corrections, I'm assuming you're training corrections officers in safety and prisoner handling procedures and that kind of stuff?
Not me personally. I'm not a corrections officer. It's kind of funny. I just started with the Department of Corrections about a year and a half ago. Before that, I spent 9 years at the Fire Academy developing online learning.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're developing training programs for them. That's cool. So, are you native to New Hampshire? Is that or moved there later on?
Yes, I actually grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. So please don't hate me for that.
No.
But back in 1997, I moved to New Hampshire to go to paramedic school, and I have not left since.
Well, no sense in going back to Massachusetts if you don't have to. So growing up in Massachusetts and given their the non-friendly gun laws in that state, what was where did the interest in guns come from? Did you grow up around them, or is that something you picked up later on?
It's something I picked up later on. My the only person that had guns in either side of the family was an uncle on my father's side, and because he liked hunting. Mm-hmm. Other than that, my exposure to guns was very little. My father, at the age of 16, bought me a .22 because I expressed some sort of interest in that. And then it wasn't until I went into the Marine Corps that I really had a big exposure to all types of firearms. And that was the first time that I actually had shot a handgun.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of funny. We went to the range and they said, "This is a handgun. This is how you use it. Go ahead and we'll run you through the course of fire." And it was kind of funny that I qualified expert my first time through with a 45.
Oh, wow. So that sparked your interest in handguns. How long after that before you went out and got your own, and what was it?
When I get out of the Marine Corps, is when I actually turned 21. I went in when I was 17. So once I get out, I was old enough to buy my own handgun. And of course, I gravitated. My first handgun that I purchased was a Springfield Armory 1911.
Naturally. Go with what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely.
So how long after that before you were introduced to competitive shooting, and how did that happen?
It wasn't long before some people were talking about shooting competition. I started out shooting pins with my 45, and then somebody mentioned this thing called run and gun shooting. That's what they said. We go shoot run and gun stuff. So I showed up to a couple matches, and they were USPSA matches, and I didn't like it. I found that the people were really cliquey, and if you were in the clique, nobody really talked to you. I really didn't know what I was doing, and people were getting frustrated with me. And I said, this is not for me. And I stopped shooting competitively. I probably only shot maybe 3 or 4 matches, and that was it for me. I didn't like the crowd. I didn't like the clickiness. So I lost interest real quick. I shot some pins, and that was about it.
So where did you hear about IDPA?
Oh, funny you ask. We're going to fast forward to 2014. I pretty much, with life being young, having to get on my feet, working all the time, my gun interest kind of died off for quite a few years. But back in 2014, my friend Charlie says, "Hey, I'm shooting an IDPA match. Would you like to come and watch?" I'm like, "Well, what's this IDPA thing?" And he goes, "Well, come and watch and see what it's like." And I said, "Okay." So I went, and I was like, "Wow, I really want to do this." And this was, I think it was May or June of 2014. And I think wasn't long after that match, probably 3-4 days. I went out and I bought a gun. I think I bought a Glock 19. And I bought everything. I was ready to go, and I was ready to shoot my match the next month. I was ready to go. And it is kind of funny because the next match was a classifier, the old classifier. So I'm like, okay, that means I can get a classification. I'm ready. I'm good to go. And I shot the classifier, and I came out as a marksman. Right. I said, okay, I'm happy with that. I didn't know really what I was doing. It was my first match. I was really nervous, just like most new shooters. Mm-hmm. And I was afraid I was going to make a mistake. I didn't want to make a mistake and look foolish. So, but I came out as a marksman. I was happy that I came out pretty much unscathed. I didn't have any procedural errors. I was good.
Didn't get DQ'd.
I didn't get DQ'd. Well, you know what they say about DQs, right? There are those who've been DQ'd and those who will.
Exactly.
So, and then I couldn't wait for the next match. I just couldn't wait. And it's funny because at the club I belong to now, on Tuesdays they'd run this thing called Tactical Tuesdays, and it was pretty much an IDPA practice. So all the new shooters would show up. You'd pay $5. You didn't need to be a member of the club. And they would take you through shooting skills like drawing from the holster and engaging a target, drawing from the holster, engage, 2 rounds on a target, tactical reload, 2 rounds on a target. So they would do some skill building, and they'd also set up some mini stages. So it wasn't just all skills. You could go and practice under like a pseudo match condition. And it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Is that your home club now?
Yes, Pioneer Sportsmen Incorporated in Dunbarton, New Hampshire. It's an awesome club.
Give the guys a shout out. Tell us a little about the club and how often you guys hold matches.
Wow, that's That's a tall order because we hold. Well, first of all, I'll start with the IDPA program. John Wolf, who is the chairman of that discipline, and the Chris Tessier, who's a coach here, they've done a lot of work to that club. I mean, for that discipline, and have brought it from just kind of being run of the mill to a premier discipline within the club. Our big match, our state match every year is the Live Free or Die match, and it will sell out in about 2.5 hours.
Holy cow.
And that's a tier 4 match. It sells out in about 2.5 hours. And when you're a match director there, I've been a match director for a couple of the local matches, and I was extremely nervous to fall short of what I perceived was the expectation of the type of matches that we should put on. I mean, people rave about our matches. I don't think we really have low attendance even at club matches. They do a really, really good job. We were fortunate. Our club was fortunate to have the public bay at the last indoor nationals, the 20th anniversary. So that was a quite a treat for us.
Nice.
But I have to say that John Wolf and Chris Tessier have poured their heart and soul into getting the IDPA program at Pioneer up and running, and they've done a fantastic job. It shows that their blood, sweat, and tears have paid huge dividends with interest.
Very good. So what do you remember from the first actual match, non-classifier match that you participated in?
I was scared. I still didn't really have a grasp on what I was doing. I make mistakes. I was shooting too fast. All the things that a new IDPA shooter would do, I did. Except for probably DQing.
Right. Thank goodness for that.
So yeah, I don't remember my first match all that well because I think I was just too nervous. I was just happy to survive.
Right. Just blank it all out and move on.
Absolutely.
So how long before you got up the nerve to actually sign up for a sanction match?
I believe my first sanction match was that winter or that fall, the Bug Nationals.
Oh.
Which I think was the second time the Bug Nationals had been held.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for me, that I ended up traveling with John Wolf because he's been to the Smith & Wesson in an indoor range enough times to tell me, where to go, what to do. Because I walked in there, I was looking for a safety table, and there's no safety tables. I was like a fish out of water. I was lost. I was walking around. I think my eyes were so big that I couldn't open my eyes any wider because I was like, wow, I don't know where I am or what I should do. I am really nervous.
Yeah, that first the first big match is always eye-opening for especially for a new shooter. So what's your favorite division? What are you competing in most often now? And are you still shooting the 1911s?
No. I went through a transition. I started with Glock. And it's kind of funny because at my first indoor nationals that following February, I had an issue with my Glock, and it wasn't the trigger safety wasn't resetting properly, and the person at the safety wasn't comfortable with that. So we called the match director over, and the match director says if he has another gun, he can shoot it. And the person who was doing the safety check, my friend at the time, I didn't know him, but we became really good friends, Vinny Durso. He loaned me his gun, his magazines, his holster, and his magazine pouches so I could finish the match. I was like, wow, that was amazing.
Yep.
And
that's a story that I've heard many times that, meet somebody at a match, somebody maybe you've never met before. They don't know you from Adam's House Cat, and they'll go and lend you a gun so you can finish a match.
Absolutely. And that was a match I got my first match bump.
Wow. Did he claim credit?
No, no, he was really good about that. But the funny thing was, is after the match, I went back to where he's doing the safety checks, and he wasn't there. So I'm running around this whole big complex looking for him to give him his gun back because I didn't want him to think that, hey, I was just going to walk off with it.
Right. You finally found him, I guess.
I did. But I spent a little bit more time on the M&P, and then I decided to switch back to the 1911. And I found that I struggled a lot with the 1911 and 9mm. I just couldn't get them to run correctly. So I decided I'm going to switch to the Revolver.
Really?
Yep. And I'm all Revolver. I've been all Revolver. I was all Revolver last year, and I'm going to just stick with the Revolver.
Talk about the transition from a semi-auto to a revolver. That's fewer and fewer people are taking up the wheel gun, and I've actually thought about doing it myself. I've got a GP 100. I've thought about getting out there and trying it. What is it about the? I mean, obviously the reload is a big difference, but talk about the challenge of. It's one thing to start with the revolver, but to go from the semi-auto to the revolver. Talk about that transition.
I guess one word would come to mind at first is frustrating.
Right.
It's a little bit more difficult with the Revolver because you can't plan your stages with your friends. You can't really talk about it because you have a whole different plan. You don't shoot as fast. When you look at the standings, you'll never start at the top. I usually start somewhere in the middle, and I'll usually find myself somewhere. And you have to resign yourself to the fact that you'll never get a match bump.
Right. Exactly. You're now swimming in a very, very small pond.
But what I do like about the Revolver is that it commands attention. Mm-hmm. When you walk on a range and people see you got a Revolver, everybody looks. It's kind of like a bad car accident. You really don't want to, but you can't help it.
But you can't. That guy's shooting a revolver.
He must be crazy.
He must be crazy or really good, one or the other.
I'll land on the crazy part.
Talk about you shot the Revolver all this year. Talk about this year, your performance and what it was like shooting an entire season with the wheel gun, and do you have a memory or two, something funny, something interesting, or something that you're proud of from this season?
Well, I didn't. I shot it. I dedicated myself to the Revolver all season. I moved right in the middle of the season. I moved into back into my house, and it was I was sidetracked from practicing because there's just too much to do. You know, life gets in the way sometimes, and there's no way around it. But I did shoot it. I did shoot matches. I did get out and get some practice in. Nothing really spectacular except for there's a couple of friends that also shoot Revolver, and we're all about the same skill level. Mm-hmm. So when we look at shooting any of the major matches, we compare our scores. One somebody will win a couple of stages, another person will win a couple of stages, and we're all right in that ballpark. So there's that little competition, and it's nice when everybody shows up to the match to compete together. And half the time we get a chance to squad up. We can strategize. We do just like everybody else does. We team up and we say, how are you going to shoot this stage? How are you going to shoot this stage? I'm going to shoot it this way. Why are you going to shoot it that way? And we strategize, and then we run it.
Mm. What's the practice routine like for you when life isn't in the way? And I understand because it got in the way big time for me this year, so I totally understand. But when you're in it and you're preparing for a big match, what's the practice routine like? How often are you dry firing versus going out and shooting at the range versus shooting local matches? What's the preparation like?
Depending on the day, pick up the gun, pull it out of the safe, look at it, take a sight picture, pull the trigger a couple times, to put on everything, dry fire, practice your transitions, dry firing, practice your reloads, then go to the range. And now I've come to the point where I don't spend a lot of time at the range when I practice. I'll show up when I can. I'll shoot 200-300 rounds in an hour and pack up my stuff and go home.
Right.
And I like to practice. Like when I go to the range, I try to have an idea of what I want to practice. Am I going to practice distance shooting? Am I going to practice transitions? Am I going to practice one-handed shooting, whether it be strong hand or support hand? And I'm going to work on those skills.
Mm-hmm. So you focus on a limited number of things, so you're not doing a whole bunch of stuff and coming home with not a whole lot of accomplishment.
No, that's correct. I mean, I can't see going to the range and just to throw lead down there. It's first of all,
Right.
It costs too much, and time is valuable.
Absolutely. All right. Next question is one that I always try to ask, and it's 9 times out of 10 the answer is completely lame or boring. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's a weird question. But every now and then I get a gem. So that's why I always ask. Besides the gun, the holster, the mag pouches, the usual stuff that you always take with you to a match, is there something in particular that you always make sure that you take with you in your range bag, and why?
D-lead wipes.
Good answer.
Well, just because you go to the caterer and you get food and you've been picking up brass, or you've been you're shooting, you get lead all over your hands, and lead is a big deal, and I think more shooters need to be aware of that it can pose a big risk, health risk, if you don't wash your hands. So I bring the D-lead wipes, and they're good for a couple people, so you can use it, hand it off to your friend. I give one to your friend and have them hand it off to you, and wipe your hands down pretty good. And I also try not to touch my food when I can. I try to leave it in the wrapper or whatnot.
Right.
So I'm not consuming lead.
You were talking about the live free or die match. Any particular moments or stages, or a particular match from a previous live free or die championship that you could share with us to give us kind of a flavor of just how much fun that match is?
Sure. I have to tell you that this Live Free or Die, I look forward to it every year, not only because it's my home club, but we actually have a theme for each year.
Oh.
Like this year was Big Here, Big Hits, TV shows of the 80s. So every stage was a TV show from the 80s. From Miami Vice to Airwolf, MacGyver, Charlie's Angels, MASH, Dukes of Hazzard, Night Court, Cheers.
That's pretty cool. So how does that work out? Describe one of those stages and how they incorporated that theme in the stage.
Okay, I'll talk about the stage I designed because it'd probably be the easiest for me to explain.
Oh, cool.
Cheers, if you can picture, there's a C-shaped bar just like in Cheers. The starting position was you stand facing the bar holding a beer mug, which actually looked like it had beer in it. Above your thing, like when Norm walks in, everybody goes, Norm, and raises their beer.
Right.
And that's when people from the Wingnut Tyrannical Front, otherwise known as WTF, start creating melee. So you have to drop the beer, and there's a couple targets to the left of the bar and one down low, so you actually have to go left. Engage those, one at the end of the bar with a non-threat in front of it, and then as you transition to the right, there are two tables laying on their side with targets behind those, so you have to run up to those and engage the targets over the tables. Then you come down to the middle of the stage, and there's a table which you have to push over. As you push over, Two targets drop out from behind the walls, and a swinger comes from behind the pool table.
Oh, wow. You had to save Cliffy?
Yeah, pretty much.
For our younger listeners, they won't have any idea what we're talking about.
Well, there are always reruns.
There's
on
always
Netflix.
reruns. It's what Netflix is for. That's right. So as we kind of wind this up, the big question that I always ask, as is, what is it about IDPA? You've been doing this for almost 5 years now, and you're designing stages and directing your matches for your local club from time to time. You're shooting a wheel gun, for crying out loud. What is it about this sport that you love so much that keeps you doing it and keeps you so active in it?
Well, Lloyd, it's like a lot of your other guests have said, it's the people. It's truly it's kind of like having a big family, and every match is a family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we go to matches in Pennsylvania, New York. We travel a fair amount, and we run into the same people at all these different matches. And it's like, there may have been some time, but when you see them, it's like there isn't, it hasn't been months gone by. It's like you picked up right where you left off at the last match.
It's like Norm walking into Cheers.
Absolutely.
Yep. That very cool. It is. I like to think of it as a family reunion with sporadic gunfire.
There you go. I just want to say that, you can go anywhere within IDPA. You'll know people, or you'll know people who know people. It's truly a small community, and I have to say that it's a very, very warm and open type of community where they welcome the new people coming in. There's no intimidation. They're very helpful. If you have you get new shooters, and any new shooters listening out there, you'll probably get some unsolicited advice. But it's all good advice, and they want to see you do well.
Absolutely. None of the clicks. Everybody's, you walk onto a stage with 10 other people you've probably never seen in your life, and by the time you're finished at the end of the day, you've got 6 or 7 friends that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life probably, and every time you see them, it'll be hugs and smiles, and it's a fantastic community.
Absolutely. We need to get more people in the sport because we're running out of new people to squat up with.
Tired of seeing the old faces.
Yeah, absolutely. We need some new people.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for everything you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to come on the show. Thank you for your service, by the way. I forgot to mention, and I hope I get a chance to see you on the range at some point down the road.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.